Alright guys, such Kremp again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day. So far, the #1 seed for Major 1 in Madrid has officially been locked in. Some big series going down tonight with some major implications indeed. Certainly Nadeshot's reaction to Los Angeles Thieves. Shock defeat, it's got to be said again, this time at the hands of Boston Breach and Snoopy. They finished the stage 5 and 2, but they are going to be far from the favourites going into this big tournament. Lots to discuss over the coming minutes. Very much interested your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. We're going to begin right about here just looking at the placement probabilities based from Doug Levy's kind of analysis that he did on this. I think, to be fair, the tiebreaker rules this year have changed somewhat in terms of how the head-to-head situation works. But the bottom line is that going into the day, these were roughly the likely first-round opponent of the various teams. We'll discuss in detail tomorrow what the bracket is going to be looking like, which teams are in particular seedings and who they might play and losers or whatever. But this is how it looked going into the day if the teams got the results they were expected to get. Some teams did, some teams didn't. This first series was an absolute marathon. It lasted forever. And Cammy, well, his KD in this series was definitely not harnessing the power of aBeZy. I don't exactly understand how Cammy's camera managed to have aBeZy on it. I actually don't really know how that's even possible. But yeah, it definitely raised a few questions. People like, hang on a second, is this whole league pre-recorded? Is it all just for show? Like, what's going on here? So that was a weird one. But they eventually figured it out, and Cammy actually was back on the camera. These were the standings going into the day. So Thieves, 5-1. They won many series in the first couple of weeks back in December. Since then, they've looked definitely shakier, it's got to be said. And even the series back in December, none of them were especially clear-cut. And at the moment, as I said yesterday with Falcons have improved, I think, although it's been stunted to some degree by making so many changes. They've just not improved as quickly as other teams. Thieves, I think the same thing applies. They've improved from where they were at the start of the season, but they've not improved quickly enough to be considered the favourite, especially among the theoretical super teams going into the first major. So this is how it all looked going into the day. FaZe had guaranteed winners already, whatever happened. Even Heretics guaranteed winners at 2-5 based on the amount of maps they won, which they won a lot of maps. They just lost a lot of game 5s, and that's how Heretics usually do things. So the match gets underway, and Thieves have a nice little 25 or so point advantage here, 35 points actually at this point. Purge is 13-13. When I go to the next slide, you'll see that Purge, despite the fact that the game is much further on, is actually 10-21. That's because there was a reset here, and this was the second time the map was actually played. And this was, again, I don't understand how a 5-map series can take 2.5 hours, but it did, pretty much. And yeah, the CDL's got to think about that, because it was a bit of a shambles this series, and I definitely think that Thieves, by the time they got to the end of the series, were like, kind of a bit mentally checked out, but still, no excuse, you got to lock in. So Boston, the star of the show here was Snoopy, and some of these clips were genuinely astonishing. I talked about Snoopy a lot over the last couple of years. We know the criticism that he faced, and a lot of it was understandable. Slasher was saying the guy didn't remember search and destroy strats, he didn't know the harbor rotations or whatever, and it was a big issue for Boston at the start of last season. But clearly, Snoopy had talent, and on a game like this, it's undeniable that Snoopy is a potential star of not even just the future, but also a star of the present day. He was cooking everyone under the sun here on the Los Angeles Thieves, some of the very best individual players in the world, but not, as it stands, the best team, I wouldn't argue. So, yeah, remarkable stuff. And the end of the map is 252.05. You know that Purge had that crazy 45 kill map the other day. Not this time, but Snoopy was 41-22 with over 2.5 minutes in the hill. Like, this guy, I mean, you can't quite see it. Here we go. This guy was doing everything. Like, it was genuinely one of the most world-class performances that I've ever seen. So, Snoopy, man, what an exciting team Boston are. It proves to me that they've made the right calls sticking by Snoopy over the last couple of years. Whether they can put the team around him that's able to take them to the next level, I don't know. But, you know, they've committed now to this Snoopy project. I think this season we're finally seeing that start to pay off here for them, to be honest. And on the game too, man, this was a moment, wasn't it? HyDra, one of the best players in the world. He's hitting the flank. He sees Awakening, hits a couple of shots. He goes for the jump slide, and Awakening guns him. that's not a gunfight you want to lose, because Boston go on to win this round and they win the map as well. So that was an absolute disaster class there from HyDra, and at this point it was a 2 versus 1 for Scrap. Scrap actually had a good map here. His search and destroy Scrap has actually been very good, but Snoopy at this point again 15 in 6, and even I think this round Scrappy gets the bomb down or something, and then Snoopy ninja defuses it just before Scrappy gets the kill on him. So again, even though Scrap died, or even if Snoopy died that round, it still didn't really matter. They did a masterclass regardless. And have a look at this, man. I mean, Snoopy was just everything the first 2 maps of the series. He gets this long-range kill, drops down the shaft, gets this second kill as well. Envoy gets absolutely guns, and, you know, then it's only Scrap remaining. And as I say, the rest from there was notable for sure. This, though, was then the control, and it was an absolute bloodbath. Like, this map was over in a heartbeat. HyDra, Scrap, all had phenomenal maps here. So this was, yeah, Boston got slammed. And it looks like, to be fair, this was a potential reverse sweep on the cards, because then they went to a protocol. Thieves won this as well, took it to a game 5. So, like, it's not like Thieves are bad, but they're just not as impressive as we might have expected, right? And certainly there were moments in many of these series from HyDra and from others where you think the team that they should be is not where they currently are. But Boston we know are good. Like, there's no doubt that Boston are pretty damn solid. And they've also got the superstar takeover power now, which they've not necessarily previously had, with Snoopy coming to play. But I still think the key point really is for them, they need an AR player who's going to be taking over. And as it stands, it's not really happening. I mean, this map 5, again, it was a Purge and Snoopy masterclass really here. Cammy finally got a kill on the board in the final round. There were some reset cheeses. Again, you guys can tell by the way that the CDL have covered up the scoreboards here. But yeah, Thieves made it close, but in the end they lose, and Boston take another victory. So remarkable stuff, to be honest, for Boston. Obviously, Scrappy wasn't very happy about it, but he wasn't too mad. I mean, fair play for Scrap. I think easily the players could have been like, oh, CDL reset cheese, series took too long, all this stuff. But, you know, fair play to Scrappy, no excuses. But as Nadeshot says, we almost brought it back. Hopefully the boys can catch some momentum at Major 1. GG's Boston, the talent's there. We've got to take advantage of opportunities when we have them. So yeah, Nadeshot keeping his remarks today relatively brief, but nonetheless understandable that there was some frustration about the way that they've currently been playing. So yeah, Boston, they get the win against Thieves. Thieves slammed them for 2 maps in a row. And the remarkable thing is, I guess, for Nadeshot is that he took a $200,000 pay cut to make this team happen. And he got beaten by a team who had a player with a 0.5. How often do you see that? Cammy had an absolute shocker this series, had a 0.57. He's actually been pretty good so far this year, and he still had more damage than Purge. So it's not like he, you know, is awful and has always been awful. He just had a really stinker series, and especially on the map 3 and map 4, and yet Snoopy's masterclass still got them the win. So that's pretty insane, I think, from both fronts, to be honest. And this is what it left us in the situation of, with Thieves and Boston very likely to match up again on the first day on Thursday. And that's a massively important first round game. We'll talk about how everything actually played out tomorrow. What it meant as well for the final games of the day, especially OpTic versus Toronto, was pretty interesting based on the way that the tiebreakers work, because Boston have the head-to-head on OpTic, Thieves and Ravens. That put them in a really nice position. If OpTic had have been, you know, 3-0'd by Toronto, then they'd have dropped down to the 5th seed. That's, of course, not what happened. And then it meant that OpTic beating Ultra gets number 1, Ultra beating OpTic gets number 3. We'll see how that played out here in the coming minutes. The next series, though, we want to get into is Cloud9 FaZe. And this started in the way that I expected it to. FaZe were slamming them. It was 139 to 12 at one point on the game 1. Eventually, they closed it out 250 to 130. And just have a look at the numbers here, right? Kremp and Mack, they're trying their best. I will say for Mack, whatever team he's on, whenever he plays FaZe, I swear he lives for it. I know that he had a rough performance in the map 5 in a particular moment we'll get into. But Mack is always really good against FaZe. I know that FaZe fans are not a big fan of when they have to play Mack in a series, but both of the ARs were like double negative. And it's a question, who's worse right now, Attach and Sib? They are, no doubt, one of the worst AR duos in the game. They're certainly down there. And on the other side, Cellium and Drazah having a good time. So this was not a fun series for those guys, really. They did, however, win the round 11 search and destroy. So it actually became a very competitive series. And I think Cloud9 deserves some credit for that. FaZe will probably think they could have played a bit better, but even then, the fact that they iced up in the manner they did, But, you know, did they really ice up or did Cloud9 throw it away? I guess that's the argument here. FaZe eventually go on to win the control, but Cloud9 bounced back with a very impressive hold on the vault in the end. They bring this one back to win it. All of the players on Cloud9 had a good map here, especially Kremp and Mack. Again, the SMGs really delivering some good performances, I thought, when it mattered. Cellium, though, wow, this guy deserves so much credit for the turnaround in his play. He is... Look, for the last few years, Cellium has had the best numbers in the game. Right now, Cellium might just be the best player in the game. I've been hesitant to say that for years now, because although the numbers have always been there, the impact has been a question. But when Cell's got the most kills in the lobby, the most damage in the lobby, and sometimes the most hill time in the lobby, and he's pulling out an SMG at times and frying with it, like, that's the Cellium that we have been asking for years. And for some reason, for the last, like, 2-3 seasons, he's not played like that. Whenever he does, he's, like, unreal. And he's at it again, and I do think that's a scary sign for the opposition. This, though, was Cellium's other masterpiece of the day. I just don't understand. Cloud9 was so scared here, letting him slide into the site. I mean, this kill was bad enough that, of course, I mean, I don't know what Mack was doing, to be honest, right? Like, he didn't really have teammates help. He didn't even shoot back. And then the final guy, Kremp, gets gunned as well. Rough round to lose. And frankly, that was the series. Because even though Cloud9 certainly had some luck on their side, Simp just flew out the window here on this round and died immediately. But then they got bailed out because Attach got a 3-piece with the car. Like, you know, the OpTic van became the Cloud9 van. This time we got a 3-piece with it. They tied it 4-4, but in the end it didn't matter because FaZe closed it out in 10. So, you know, Cellium, a 1.43. Actually not the most damage in the lobby. That went to Drazah. Simp with a series that he said on Twitter, he wasn't, you know, his best series, but his teammates got the job done. So close fought affair. I think it will give confidence to other teams that FaZe are absolutely beatable. But Cloud9 going 1-5 and now 1-6 after this, losing in the manner they did, that's got to be pretty demoralizing. It will not give them any momentum going into the major. And the final series of the day, this was an impressive one. OpTic Texas versus Toronto. Toronto was 6-0 going into the series. You look at the teams they played there and you say, all right, yes, they played FaZe early doors, but FaZe at that point weren't looking so good. And sure, they've had some impressive results, but still, this was going to be a key test for Toronto, and actually for OpTic as well. Ultra have been going to a fair few Game 5s, but they've been very good in Search and Destroy, so Game 2 is going to be quite telling, as were the hardpoints in general, but OpTic really just had absolutely no problems dealing with Ultra on the opening hardpoint. We then went to a Search and Destroy on the red card. OpTic got the job done here as well. There was a bit of a comeback from Ultra over the last couple of rounds. They made some decent adaptations, but again, with Huke on the roster, there has been absolutely no doubt that OpTic are looking extremely strong in this game mode. It's been some of the other modes that have sometimes let them down. This was the issue, certainly with online COD in, let's say, last year when Pred was on the team, that Kenny and Pred, both of them, would, in online Search and Destroys, sometimes be struggling a fair bit. With the Huke iteration, now I'm not necessarily saying that it's better with Huke than Pred, but in certain situations it is, because in these online moments, for their Search and Destroy so far with Huke, they've been very impressive indeed. You might have Kenny with a bad search map online. It happens, and it happens relatively frequently so far this season. You're not often going to get Huke with a bad Search and Destroy map online. Now, on LAN, we'll see what happens when they get to Madrid, but a critical series, right? Because this was for the #1 seed going into the major. There was some cheese happening as well. This was Beans looking through the crack that we saw the other day as well on the stairs on the red card here. So, yeah, this is a little bit questionable. Maybe some GAZ to come through for that. But anyway, Beans gets the couple of kills. They close out the rounds. And eventually they bring it back to 5-4. But it wasn't enough in the end. Ultra, however, did take a very impressive Game 3 control. A map that usually I would, have expected OpTic to close out this one in a 3-0. But that's the nice thing of where OpTic currently sit, really, because, they can afford to lose this control and still be very confident they're going to go on to win the series because they've won the Game 2 after winning the Game 1. This, I think, has always been the thing that impressed me about FaZe. When FaZe are in their heyday, when they're playing their best, and this is true for any team, but the best teams go up 2-0. I know it sounds like a no-brainer, but, the teams that are really playing well, they'll be great at hardpoint because all excellent teams who are going to win events are great at hardpoint, but they'll always back that up with a Search and Destroy win a lot of the time, even against great teams. So OpTic doing that here meant that, yeah, they lost this game. Toronto had a great attacking round in the vault. and they went down. Shotzzy didn't have a great map here. They lose the game 3, but they're still in prime position to capitalize on the series. And that's exactly what they go on to do. And this final map, again, was pretty crushing in favor of OpTic Texas. Like Toronto, they looked a bit uncoordinated at times, but OpTic really just came to play. And this was Huke's map. Wow, what a takeover here on the Protocol. A great map for Dashy too as well. But Huke was just an absolute force. And that is the key question, really, for many going into the major. OpTic have just secured, with this result tonight, the #1 seed going into the tournament. They may be considered favourites. FaZe have been looking indomitable in some regards, but today was a Game 5 round 10 against Cloud9, so who knows where things currently sit. And at the end of the day, FaZe 4-3 in qualifiers, OpTic 6-1 with the tiebreak over the other 6-1 team. So what a way to build confidence for OpTic going into the major, because we know over the last couple of weeks there's been some questions how good OpTic really are compared to some of the other teams, certainly after some of the results they were having, close series, etc, etc. But no, OpTic close out the weekends with a very impressive dub against what were previously an undefeated team in the qualifiers going into this situation, and it's a green carpet for the OpTic boys. Dashy marginally positive, Kenny marginally positive, as you would expect really with the current AR SMG meta. You're expecting your SMGs to be the ones frying, and we see it. Huke has a 1.4, Shotzzy has a 1.15. So that's your #1 seed for the tournament. We're going to discuss all the implications of this for the bracket tomorrow. Very much interested in your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.